अगली और आखिरी तकरीर का मौजू है 130 साला तारीख़ अहमदियत पर एक नज़र। अंग्रेज़ी में ये तकरीर मुकर्रम रफ़ीक अहमद हयात साहब अमीर जमात अहमदिया बरतानिया फरमाएंगे।
अशहदु अन ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाहु वहदहु ला शरीका लहु व अशहदु अन्ना मुहम्मदन अब्दुहु व रसूलुहु अम्मा बादु फ़अऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम। Most respected Amir Sahib, esteemed guests, brothers and sisters and MT viewers all around the world, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Today I've been given the opportunity to discuss some of the greatest milestones and the achievements of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat over the course of 130 years. This is an impossible task given the permitted time, but I will try my best to highlight some of the key events during this period. What is the true measure of a successful community? Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran defined it as such: let today embrace the past with remembrance and the future with longing. That indeed is how we look upon the success and the virtues of the Jamaat. We embrace the remembrance of our past and look longingly into its future, because our Jamaat has a unique and precious element that supersedes all else, and that is divine guidance. These values, these teachings, were found in none other than the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat, the promised Messiah al-Islam, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. He was a humble messenger of Allah, the long-awaited Messiah, and the metaphorical second coming of Jesus al-Islam. A divine guide whose advent was foretold by the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His arrival would bring an end to the religious wars and introduce the jihad of the pen. He stated that true jihad was the internal struggle to reform oneself in the eyes of Allah. Through divine guidance, he was able to reveal how Hazrat Isa al-Islam survived the crucifixion and traveled towards India to continue his ministry amongst the lost tribes of Israel. It was also revealed to the Prophet Messiah al-Islam to search for the tomb of Hazrat Isa al-Islam, which led his companions to Kashmir in India, where the tomb of Hazrat Isa can still be seen today. Even before his claim, the promised Messiah al-Islam was renowned as a learned Islamic scholar and would often engage in public debates and dialogues with Christian missionaries, Hindu revivalists, and some Muslim scholars in the defense of the true teaching of Islam. One of the most noted was the prayer duel between the promised Messiah al-Islam and Dr. Alexander Dowie. After Dr. Dowie made a claim to be Elijah III, Hazur stated in an American journal that if the pretender of Elijahship shows his willingness by any direct or indirect mean to enter the list against me, he shall leave the world before my eyes with great sorrow and torment. These two signs are for Europe and America. The tragic death of Dr. Dai from an acute paralysis in 1907 proved beyond doubt that divine hand had intervened in the favor of the promised Messiah and Islam. In 1869, Hazur attended a public discussion with Maulvi Muhammad Hussain Batwali, a leader of Ahle Hadith community. When Hazur questioned Mr. Batwali's belief on certain theological points, he discovered his answer was given in accordance with Islamic teachings, so he refused to debate with him further. The person who had brought the promised Messiah al-Islam for the discussion was furious and expressed his dismay for this letdown. However, Hazur maintained, whatever I did was to seek the pleasure of Allah. I don't care if anyone condemns it. Allah the Almighty was so pleased that the following prophecy was revealed. God is pleased with your attitude. He will shower his blessings upon you, so much so that the kings will seek blessings from your garments. This was one of the first revelations the promised Messiah had received from Allah. For Huzur, this was a huge revelation, especially considering that at that time he lived a very simple life and often spent most of his time in deep prayer and ate very little. In fact, it was noted that on his father's passing, Huzur alayhi salam became concerned over the sources of his income. God the Almighty vouchsafed him with the following revelation: Alaysa Allahu bikafirin abdahu. Is not God sufficient for his servant? And Allah the Almighty revealed these signs time and time again, and in turn the future of Huzur and the Jamaat was secured under his protection. Many incredible events took place throughout the life of the Prophet ﷺ, but due to the shortage of time, I'm unable to relate them all. Huzur spent much time in prayer and reflection, and after retreating for 40 days in solitude in a house in Husharpur, Huzur announced through the publication of a green paper announcement on the 20th of February 1888 that Allah had revealed various signs, including the arrival of a promised son, later to be known as Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu. Hazrat Masih Maud published more than 90 books throughout his life in Urdu, Arabic, Persian, and also established the Review of Religion and Al-Hakam magazines. His magnum opus was Brahine Ahmadiyyat. This series of books elaborated upon the divine origin of the Holy Quran and the truthfulness of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah the Almighty demonstrated many heavenly signs in support of the Prophet ﷺ. One of the signs was the sudden appearance of plague in the province of Punjab. On February the 6th, 1898, Huzur saw in a vision angels planting black trees in different places in Punjab, a sign of the plague. The Prophet ﷺ announced that all his true followers would not need any vaccination, as they will be saved and will not be harmed by this deadly disease. Indeed, Allah the Almighty saved his messenger, his family, and all of the faithful followers, as was foretold in the following prophecy: I'll protect all those who are within the periphery of your house. The Jamaat continued to grow in great folds, and it was not long before the following began to form. On the 23rd of March, 1889, the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat was established. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the promised Messiah, accepted the hands of 40 faithful servants in the allegiance of the 10 conditions of Ba'ath. The Ba'ath took place at the home of Hazrat Sufi Ahmad Jan in the city of Ludhiana. Hazrat Hakim Maulvi Nuruddin Raziyallahu Anhu was the first person to take Ba'ath at the blessed hand of the Prophet ﷺ. This was indeed a revolutionary and yet modest beginning to a new chapter in the history of Islam. One of the signs of the advent of the promised Messiah, as described by the Holy Prophet ﷺ, was that he will be raised near a white minaret east of Damascus. In fulfillment of this prophecy, the promised Messiah laid the foundation stone of Minarat al-Masih on February the 13th, March 1903. The Jamaat grew as followers continued to come in search for the true path of enlightenment. Then, under divine inspiration, Huzur announced in May 1891 that he was the promised Mahdi awaited by the Muslims. And Huzur al-Islam stated, the signs fulfilled so far are so numerous that there is no room left for an honest mind to deny them. All the earthly and heavenly signs of the appearance of the promised Messiah have been manifested in my time. Following his announcement in 1891, Huzur decided to hold the first annual Jalsa Salana. The first Jalsa was held from December the 27th to 29th at the Aqsa Mosque in Qadian. Only 75 members attended the Jalsa. The last Jalsa attended by the Prophet Islam in 1907 saw some 2,000 participants, a huge victory at that time. This relates to the revelation Hazur al-Islam had published in 1889 that stated, thousands of truthful people will join his ranks. He shall himself look after them and make the community grow, so much so that its numbers and progress shall amaze the world. The community shall be a lighthouse so high as to illumine the four corners of the world. On April the 27th, 1908, Hazur al-Islam traveled with his family to Lahore. He delivered many speeches, met many dignitaries belonging to different faiths. Being a Prince of Peace, he composed a treaty titled A Message of Reconciliation on the 25th of May, outlining his proposals to bring Hindu and Muslims together. On the May the 26th, after a short illness, Hazur took his last breath and met his Creator, Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. We are all from Allah, and indeed we return to Him. The last words on his blessed lips in Urdu were, Lord, my dear Lord. This was indeed an incredible loss for the Jamaat, and his demise brought about great sadness. But just as Allah the Almighty stated, it is incumbent that you must see the second manifestation, Khilafat. After the demise of the Prophet Islam, Hazrat Maulvi Hakim Nuruddin Raziyallahu Anhu was unanimously claimed as his successor on the 27th of May 1908. Aside from the fact that he was first to accept the Bai'at at the hands of the Prophet Islam, Hazrat Hakim Maulvi Nuruddin was a learned person both in spiritual and secular fields of study. He was also a Hafiz, and his knowledge of the Holy Quran and Hadith was praised throughout Punjab. His services in the cause of Islam were unparalleled in the records of Ahmadiyyat. The promised Messiah has praised him in a Persian couplet, which is a beautiful testimony to the acknowledgement of his dedication and stature. How nice it would be if everyone from my followers were Nuruddin. This is possible only when one's heart is illuminated by light of truth and a firm belief. During his Khilafat from 1908 to 1914, Hazrat Maulvi Nuruddin established various Jamaat institutions, including the Treasury, school, and publications. He also vigorously upheld the institution of Khilafat against all odds. Some of the most important events in his Khilafat include the starting of the first English translation of the Holy Quran, the establishment of Baitul Mal, the Treasury, the opening of Madrasa Ahmadiyyat, and laying the foundation of Masjid Noor and Talim al-Islam High School, as well as the first publication of Al-Fazl magazine, to name a few. Hazrat Khalifah Masih Awwal Raziyallahu Anhu also trained a team of scholars who would spread out and take the message of Ahmadiyyat. One of those scholars went by the name of Chaudhry Fateh Muhammad Sial Sahib. He was sent to England in the aim of spreading the message of Islam Ahmadiyyat. This was indeed a pivotal period for the history, and in turn began the fulfillment of the prophecy. The Prophet ﷺ writes in Zala Oham Ruhani Khazain, I may not be physically present. My writings will spread amongst the people in the West, and a large number of right-minded English people will be caught by the truth of Islam. Not only did Hazrat Khalifah Masih Awwal lay the foundation of Khilafat in Ahmadiyya Jamaat, but set in motion the Jamaat's ever-growing Tabligh efforts. He lived as a shadow of the Prophet ﷺ, and in doing so helped the Jamaat find its foundation. He sadly passed away on March the 13th, 1914. The mantle of Khilafat was passed on to the second Khalifa, Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad radiallahu anhu, the promised son of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi salam. He was 25 years old at that time. He was known as Hazrat Muslim Maud, the promised son and the reformer, following the prophecy revealed to the Prophet Messiah alayhi salam. He would be bestowed with a son who would be a sign of Allah's mercy, power, grace, and beneficence, and through whom the message of Islam and Ahmadiyyat would be carried to the ends of the earth. From a young age, he learned the translation of the Holy Quran and Hadith from Hazrat Khalifatul Masih I. He also immersed himself in the independent study of religion, history, literature, and various other subjects, thus fulfilling the prophecy. He will be extremely intelligent and understanding, and will be meek of heart, and will be filled with secular and spiritual knowledge. In 1907, an angel taught him the commentary of Surah Al-Fatiha, the first chapter of the Holy Quran, and from then on he was blessed with unusual knowledge of the commentary of the Holy Quran. In 1914, he was bestowed the blessed position of Khilafat. A congregation of around 2,000 Ahmadis, Muslims, took bath at his hand, and from then on the Jamaat began to grow in leaps and bounds. The achievement of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II, radiallahu anhu, as Khalifa for 52 years, are too numerous to relate in this short space of time. One of the most significant accomplishments was the establishment of foreign missions in various countries across the world, including the UK and US. He established the Tariq-e-Jadid and Waqf-e-Jadid schemes to fund missionary work and Jamia Ahmadiyya to train missionaries. Hazrat Muslim Maud also created the Jamaat's administrative bodies, including Ansarullah, Khudam al-Ahmadiyya, and Lajna Ma'allah. On November the 14th, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II called on the Jamaat for financial contributions for the completion of Manaratul Masih. As a result, it was completed on December 1916. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih also the first Khalifa of the Promised Messiah to travel outside India, and marked a new chapter in the history of Ahmadiyyat, and in particular the United Kingdom. Hazrat Muslim Maud traveled to the UK on the World Conference of Religions in 1924. The conference generated a lot of praise from attendees and a great amount of publicity in the British press. During this visit, another historic event took place, the establishment of the first mosque in the city of London. In 1924, the foundation of the first London mosque was laid by Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II, radiallahu anhu. The mosque became a launching pad for many historical movements. It was this very mosque that the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, informally announced his return to Indian politics scene by addressing a huge gathering of Indian Muslims, students present at Eid al-Adha. It was under the guidance of Hazrat Muslim Maud radiallahu anhu that the Imam of the London Mosque, Abdul Rahim Dard Sahib, spoke to Jinnah in favor of him returning to politics in March 1933. Once Pakistan was formed, the Jamaat was faced with another challenge, migration. During the partition of the subcontinent in 1947, thousands of members of the Jamaat had to migrate from India to Pakistan. Under the guidance of Hazrat Muslim Maud radiallahu anhu, a new center was created named Rabwa. On September the 20th, 1948, foundation stone was laid for the new town of Rabwa and the future world headquarters of the movement. Huzur moved from Lahore to his permanent residence in Rabwa on September the 19th, 1949. Under the dynamic leadership of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, most of the Jamaats were re-established in Rabwa in a relatively short period of time. When we look through the history of his Khilafat, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II fulfilled the prophecy sent down in regard to the promised son. According to the prophecy, he completed the task assigned to him by Allah in the best possible way and was finally raised to heaven to be in the presence of Allah the Almighty. On November the 9th at 4:30, Hazrat Mirza Nasir Ahmad Khalifatul Masih III Rahimahullah led the funeral prayer with almost 50,000 faithful joining the funeral prayer. This began another chapter on the history of the Jamaat. The advent of the third Khalifa, Hazrat Mirza Nasir Ahmad Rahimahullah, the Khalifa of the Promised Messiah, was born on November the 16th, 1909. His birth was foretold by Allah the Almighty in a revelation to the Promised Messiah, Islam. We give you glad tidings of a boy who will be your grandson. Before his appointment as Khalifa, Huzur held many positions, including the Sadr Anjuman Ahmadiyyat. During his Khilafat, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih III launched two major schemes. The Fazl Umar Foundation, which funded the contributions of the project began by Hazrat Muslim Maud, and Nusrat Jahan scheme to organize long-term humanitarian effort in West Africa. The then High Commissioner of Gambia in the UK spoke about the success of the Nusrat Jahan scheme, and he stated, the day was drawing near when the whole of the country would have received some benefit from the scheme and would have turned towards Ahmadiyyat, alhamdulillah. With growth comes great praise, but sadly, some strong opposition as well. In 1974, riots and protest marches erupted against the Jamaat throughout Pakistan. Houses belonging to Ahmadis were robbed and reduced to rubble. There were social boycotts against the Ahmadis. They were fired from their jobs without just cause, and some were even martyred. The persecution of Ahmadis came to peak when the Parliament of Pakistan passed an amendment on September the 7th, 1974, declaring Ahmadis as non-Muslims. This was indeed gross injustice against the Jamaat. Eventually, it led to the removal of the Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto by his hand-picked military general in a rebellion, and he was later hanged on April the 4th, 1979. Under the far-sighted leadership of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih III, the Jamaat not only survived, but thrived by the grace of Allah, alhamdulillah. Huzur encouraged students to pursue higher education and established various educational institutions. Administrative buildings, including Masjid Aqsa in Rabwa, were constructed under his guidance. It was at the occasion of laying the foundation stone of Basharat Mosque in Spain, Huzur Rahimahullah announced the popular Ahmadiyya motto, love for all, hatred for none. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih III delivered his last Friday sermon on May the 21st, 1982 at Rabwa, and sadly passed away during the night of the 8th and the 9th of June. On the 10th of June, Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad Khalifatul Masih IV Rahimahullah led the funeral prayers. More than 100,000 Ahmadis took part in the funeral prayers. Once again, a new chapter was opened in our history. It was in Rabwa that Hazrat Huzur was elected Khalifa. However, the anti-Ahmadiyya ordinance imposed on the April 26, 1984 by General Zia-ul Haq made it impossible for Huzur to function as the head of the community whilst remaining in that country. So, under divine guidance and following due consultation, Huzur decided to leave Pakistan and immediately took a flight from Karachi via Europe to London. The UK Jamaat had to adjust very quickly to changing circumstances. Suddenly becoming the seat of Khilafat, the activity of the Jamaat expanded beyond any imagination. When Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rahimahullah arrived, our Jamaat was very small, and indeed, the first two sessions of Jalsa Salana after his arrival were held in Mahmood Hall. You can imagine, most of you have seen Mahmood Hall, it's a very small place. And the final session when Huzur Anwar addressed the Jamaat was held in the community center in Surbiton with approximately 1,500 men and 1,500 women in attendance. As Khilafat had arrived without his support network, one of the first tasks that Khalifatul Masih undertook was to train the youth of the UK in the Nizam of the Jamaat in order that they could become effective helpers of Khalifatul Masih. Soon, the Fazl Mosque was proving too small. Therefore, on Huzur's instructions, a 25-acre site was purchased in Tilford near Farnham, about 35 miles from London. Based on a dream seen by Usman Chow Sahib, Huzur decided to name it Islamabad. The site soon became a hive of activity. The second Jalsa Salana, following the arrival of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, took place in Islamabad. And in 1987, he announced the new scheme of Waqf-e-No, and he urged parents to devote their unborn children to the service of Islam. The scheme, like all schemes announced by Khulafas, became extremely successful. Parents from all around the world gave pledges for their yet-to-be-born children. We saw many major developments during this period, including the creation of MTA, Muslim Television Ahmadiyyat. Muslim Television Ahmadiyyat has an astounding and lengthy history that begins in 1989. The creation of this channel saw the fulfillment of Hazrat Masih Maud-Islam's revelation, "I shall cause thy message to reach the corners of the earth." The first broadcast went on the 24th of March 1989, when the first live broadcast of Huzur's Friday sermon was conducted by phone lines to Mauritius and Germany. On the 7th of January 1994, MTA had begun to telecast transmission, and by April the 1st, 1996, MTA began to broadcast 24 hours a day. Additionally, under the guidance of Khalifatul Masih Al-Khamis Sayyid Talib bin Al-Aziz, new services have been launched, including MTA Al-Arabiya and MTA Africa. MTA is also now available on YouTube and Twitter, and most apps and on Android devices. As a recognized homeopath, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi Rahimahullah considered homeopathic treatment appropriate for poor and less developed countries. He started giving lessons on homeopathic throughout MTA. As a result, thousands of people have benefited and are still benefited from this free treatment. Another scheme of compassion was set up, an independent charity called Humanity First. This is an organization that is meant to help humanity, irrespective of race, religion, and ethnicity. All over the world, its presence is felt through its disaster relief programs. The program of Jamaat soon demanded larger premises, both for prayer and administrative facilities, and on Huzur's instruction, a suitable site was purchased in March 1996. Naming it Baitul Futuh, Huzur launched an appeal to raise funds for the construction of the large mosque, and the work started in earnest when Huzur laid the foundation stone in 1999. The first international bath also took place under the guidance of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi Rahimahullah in 1993, and around 200,000 people simultaneously accepted Ahmadiyyat via satellite transmission. Today, at the hands of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Al-Khamis Sayyid Talib bin Al-Aziz, millions of people across the world accept Bai'at at the hands of Khalifa. Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad Khalifatul Masih IV delivered his last Friday sermon at London Mosque on the 18th of April 2003, and the same evening attended a lively Majlis Irfan, a question-answer session. The Majlis Irfan session was the last time the UK Jamaat had to spend with their beloved Huzur, and on the 19th of April 2003, he passed away in his residence in London. The scene in and around Fazl Mosque will forever remain etched on our memories. Inside the mosque compound and all the streets around the mosque were full of people, all awaited with great apprehension for the election of the next Khalifatul Masih. On the 22nd of April 2003, Sahibzada Mirza Masroor Ahmad Sayyid Talib bin Aziz was elected as the fifth successor of the promised Messiah al-Islam. This marked a joyous occasion for the UK Jamaat as history took place before them. Millions of people tuned into MTA to watch the events unfold. Tears of joy and relief were shed as Huzur addressed the Jamaat, urging them to focus on prayer in this new chapter of history. I have just one request from the Jamaat at this time. Please place great emphasis on prayer. Pray, pray, please pray, please pray. One of his first tasks as Khalifatul Masih was the inauguration of Baitul Futuh Mosque on October the 3rd, 2003. Since then, hundreds of mosques around the world have been opened, and the process continues, and inshallah, many more mosques will be built in the future. The Baitul Futuh Mosque also became the site of UK Jamaat's annual peace conference initiated by Huzur Aqdas. This event sees both political and religious leaders unite under guidance of Huzur to seek peaceful solutions for our world. It was not surprising that the 38-acre site was soon proving inadequate with Jamaat's requirements. Therefore, with the blessing of Huzur, in 2005, a 208-acre farm was acquired. Huzur gave it the name Hadikatul Mahdi, the Garden of Mahdi. Ever since then, the UK Jamaat has held its Jalsa Salanas on this site. Following the instruction of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih of Khamis Ayyadullah ibn al-Aziz, the first international Jamia Ahmadiyyat was established in Collier's Wood in London, which was inaugurated by Huzur Aqdas in October 2005. And again, very quickly, this too became too small for growing needs of the students. A new place was sought, and in 2012, a new site was purchased in Hazelmere, Surrey. The 31-acre campus of Jamia Ahmadiyya has residential and tutorial facilities, as well as its own playing grounds and possibility of expansion if needed. Khilafat's centenary fell on the 27th of May 2008. 100 years of blessing of Khilafat was celebrated with the appropriate thanksgiving. The centenary Jalsa, as many of you have here present may remember, was held in Excel Centre in Docklands in London. The most touching scene was renewing the pledge of loyalty at the hands of Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen, in which Ahmadis from all over the world joined through MTA. A special event to celebrate the centenary was held at the Queen Elizabeth Conference Centre. That was attended by distinguished guests that included members of parliament, senior officials, and other invited guests. Huzur addressed this meeting, highlighting the history of the Jamaat and the true teachings of Islam. During this blessed period, Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis, Huzur Ayyadullah ibn al-Aziz, has not let any occasion go without speaking about the Islamic teaching of peace and unity at every venue, including the Houses of Parliament in the UK, the European Parliament in Brussels, and the Capitol Hill in Washington. His words and actions truly justify his title as a man of peace. Huzur has grave concerns about the state of international relations, and on this basis, he wrote letters to various world leaders, including His Holiness Pope Benedict and the President of Israel, Iran, the USA, Russia, France, and many others. Despite the continued sectarian persecution of the Ahmadi Muslims are subjected to in various Muslim-majority nations, Huzur expressly forbids any extreme violence or reaction against them. 2010 marked a very dark period in the history of the Jamaat. On the 28th of May 2010, an anti-Ahmadi terrorist attacked two mosques belonging to Ahmadiyya Jamaat in Lahore. 86 Ahmadi Muslims were martyred during the Friday prayers, while scores more were injured. The global Jamaat was grieving this horrific event. During the Friday sermon delivered soon after, Huzur Anwar spoke of how he personally telephoned families of all the martyrs to console them and to pay his condolences. He said, Allah states, and say not those who are killed in the cause of Allah that they are dead. Nay, they are living, only you perceive not. They demonstrate to the world that while they have attained the pleasure of God, they have also become a source that shall flourish faith. Despite the barbaric nature of the attack, Huzur instructed Ahmadi Muslims worldwide to respond only through prayer and entirely peaceful means. May Allah the Almighty continue to bless the families of those affected and grant all the martyrs a lofty status in paradise. Ameen. But recently, perhaps one of the most significant milestones that's been witnessed, that is the movement of Jamaat's Merkaz, the headquarters, from London to Islamabad, Tilford. This historic moment came on Monday, the 15th of April 2019, immediately after Asr prayers at Fazl Mosque, London, when Hazur Anwar departed and headed towards Islamabad. On the 17th of May 2019, the official inauguration of Masjid Mubarak, Islamabad, took place. And then on the 29th of June 2019, a historic reception was held to mark the opening of the new international headquarters of the Jamaat. During the first Friday sermon in Masjid Mubarak, Hazur stated, "May Allah the Almighty enable this mosque to be the reflection of Mubarak's mosque in Qadian. May it attract the bounties of God, and may it be blessed in all ways." From its humble beginning, when 40 faithful followers accepted Bai'at at the hands of the Prophet ﷺ in Ludhiana, to millions of Ahmadi Muslims who take Bai'at at the hands of Khalifatul Masih, Khamis Ayat Talib bin Aziz, the Jamaat has continued to grow from strength to strength and will continue to do so. May Allah the Almighty bless and protect our Khalifatul Masih and unite the Jamaat under Allah's protection and continue to grant us success in this world and the hereafter. May Allah bless you all. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.